a car running down people in New Orleans, and an explosion in Las Vegas. Follow me down the rabbit hole about the recent attacks. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the rabbit hole. I'm your host, Danny, and today we are talking about the recent attacks, the New Year's attacks, because I feel like the current events just are not stopping around here. And actually, somebody commented on something I posted on social media and said, it's going to be a busy year for you. And I was like, yeah, it really is. So before we get started, I like to thank our sponsors. So thank you, Wise Wolf Gold, for sponsoring both of my podcasts. Guys, if you want gold, silver, precious metals, you want them delivered right to your front door, $50 a month. That's their cheapest subscription, and that's unheard of. You can't get it anywhere else. So go to rabbithole.gold for all of your gold and silver needs, because you never know when the economy might crash and you might need gold and silver. So anyway, let's jump in. As always, I'm going to give you everything we have up till now. Things are constantly changing, especially with current events. So if something is different by the time you're listening to this, I apologize. I do record about a week before the general population gets to hear because of my Patreons. So that's a great time to plug Patreon. Guys, if you want your episodes a week early and ad-free, go over to Patreon, $5 a month. And first of all, you get to support me a little bit. Secondly, you don't have to listen to ads. So that's fun. And you hear episodes a week early. Okay, we're going to dive in for real this time. At around 3:15 a.m. on January 1st, 2025, a man drove a truck into a crowd on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. The truck was seen driving northwest on Canal Street and then turned right to start heading northeast onto Bourbon Street. Bourbon Street was shut down due to New Year's celebrations that were taking place, and Bourbon Street is commonly shut down because of all the different celebrations that happen in New Orleans. So the man had to go around the police cars that were blocking the road, and he actually drove onto the sidewalk and then immediately started accelerating down the road, hitting a number of people. He drove through the crowds on Bourbon Street for about 3 blocks before reaching Conti Street and hitting a boom lift, and that's what stopped the truck. He then immediately engaged the police in a gunfight. Despite the fact that he was wearing full body armor, he was shot and killed by the police. The attack resulted in 15 deaths, to include the perpetrator, and at least 30 plus injuries. The perpetrator was identified as Shamsuddin Jabbar. He was a 42-year-old U.S. citizen from Texas. He was born October 26, 1982, and raised in Beaumont, Texas. He had a misdemeanor, theft charge in 2002 when he would have been about 20, and a charge for driving with an invalid license in 2005 when he was about 23. He was active duty in the Army from 2006-2007 timeframe to 2015. In 2014, he was driving while intoxicated and pled guilty to that crime in 2015, and that may have been why he left active duty, but that didn't stop him from joining the reserves from 2015 to 2020. During his time on active duty, he did deploy to Afghanistan once in 2009. While active duty, he was a human resource specialist, and then while in the reserves, he was an IT specialist. After finishing active duty and while in the reserves, he completed his degree in computer information systems in 2017 from Georgia State University, and then 2 years later, he got his real estate license. In 2021, he started working for a consulting company related to data management. And he was making good money. He was making about $120,000 a year. So, and in Texas, you can live very well on $120,000. In December 2022, he pled guilty to a misdemeanor theft charge again. So about 20 years after the first one, he had another one. I don't know what he stole. He was sentenced to 9 months community supervision. He was married at some point before he joined the army, and those two had two daughters together. His first daughter was born around 2004, maybe. And then that marriage ended. Again, we don't really know when or why. He did end up remarrying in 2017, and the couple had a son together. That marriage also ended in divorce. They started to get divorced in 2020. And they tried to get back together, and then they ultimately divorced in 2022. The FBI is investigating this event as a terrorist attack. On December 30th, Jabbar rented a Ford F-150 Lightning, which is their electric truck, and he rented it in Texas. Now, this truck was on the dealership lot on December 14th. So it was purchased and immediately put on the Turo app, and then this guy happened to rent it. I mean, that's convenient, but all right, cool. After picking up the truck, he drove to Louisiana, and on his way, he recorded a couple of videos and posted them on his social media about his divorce and his dreams of joining ISIS, which, again, feels very convenient. Like, he was setting himself up to be this perfect attacker. Once he was in Louisiana, he got an Airbnb in the St. Roch neighborhood. They believe he was working alone, that he didn't have any accomplices, and they point to his travels to Egypt and Canada in 2023 as potential links to ISIS. Another really convenient thing is that he visited Bourbon Street in October for 2 days, and he used his Meta smart glasses to kind of scout the area before he decided to do this attack. So with the glasses, he recorded everything he was seeing, so then he could go home and study the videos. He could decide the best place to place bombs and all those different things. But I don't really understand why he would need to physically go there unless he wanted to. But there are a lot of videos on social media, on YouTube of New Orleans. Why would you not just watch those? Because then it doesn't place you in New Orleans before you have to be there, especially if you're going to try to get away with this. But obviously, he was planning on probably not getting away with it. After the attack, they found bomb-making materials at the house of Jabbar in Texas. He had placed 2 improvised explosive devices, or IEDs, along Bourbon Street before he drove down the street. So at some point, he placed these bombs there. They were found in coolers, and they were rendered safe by the bomb squad. He had a 3rd explosive device in the truck that was set to go off remotely, but the remote was found in the truck as well. So I think maybe his plan was to drive down Bourbon Street, maybe park the truck, and get away. Obviously, that would probably be his plan, and detonate the truck remotely. He brought an AR-style rifle and a pistol with him, which is what he used in the shootout with the police. And he put an ISIS flag on the back of the truck to fly while he was driving through the crowd of people. So while he was driving down Canal Street, you can see the flag on the back of the truck, and then he turns. When they started their investigation, they did cover up that flag. But there are a couple weird things, I would say, about this whole situation. In 2017, the city's Homeland Security decided to implement a public safety package. So there were concerns about terrorist attacks that had been happening all over the world, mainly car attacks, like the one that happened on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. So part of this $40 million safety plan were barriers, because barriers will stop cars from going down streets that they shouldn't, especially Bourbon Street, which is very well known. I've never been to New Orleans. I know that Bourbon Street is where you go to party and hang out, that it's mostly shut down almost all the time. That's very common knowledge. So having barriers at the beginning of the street and the end of the street, that makes a lot of sense. So cars don't turn down the street and cause mass casualties like this one did. So they also were going to implement cameras and license plate readers, or they did. This is all part of the package. So they implemented all these things. The barriers that they decided to use were called bowlers. These are cylindrical columns, and sometimes they can retract and come back up in some cases. In some cases, they're just stuck there in the ground. Well, on New Year's Eve, 11 of the 16 locations that have bollards, including the ones at the end of Bourbon Street, were down for repairs. They state that the beads thrown during Mardi Gras clogged the barrier system, and so they needed to repair them. And the city is getting prepared to host the Super Bowl and wanted to get these systems fixed before then because they want to make sure that everybody that comes in for the Super Bowl is prepared. However, this is a pretty bold move to fix these barriers at such a popular tourist time. I mean, New Orleans is one of the best party destinations year round. So I get the party basically never ends in New Orleans. The problem is that New Year's Eve is a very popular party holiday. And New Orleans was named in back-to-back articles I read about the most popular New Year's Eve destinations. I should point out that in these articles that I read about New Year's Eve destinations, they didn't include Las Vegas and New York because everyone just knows that those two are included, but they did include Nashville because, again, Nashville would be a very popular place that you would want to go spend New Year's Eve. So why would they choose such a popular time when people are going to be on the streets, be partying, to take down and repair the barriers? They just decided that they should, and then take down all of them. I don't know if you have to take down all of them or if you could just take down one or two, leave up a couple, every other one, I don't know. But it just feels like a very bold move on New Orleans' part. Like, they know how many people come out for New Year's Eve. So why would they make the decision to take down the barriers during that time? Like, why not do it during a slower time? I don't know. I feel like we've heard this story before, but it was with the levees failing during Hurricane Katrina. Another weird thing that I found, and I don't know if it's connected, but I thought that I would just share it because maybe it is connected and I didn't find the connection, but you guys are really good at this too, and you guys sometimes send me the connections. So, an assistant district attorney with Orleans Parish DA's office died of an apparent suicide just days after the attack. On January 4th, police found the body of Ian Kirsting at his office around 9 p.m. He had an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. So he was assigned to the office's SAKI unit, so Sexual Assault Kit Initiative. And this division worked with NOPD's sex crimes detectives. It just makes me wonder, like, what he knows, because sex trafficking is so prominent in New Orleans and in any, like, destination place, tourist place. There's going to be a lot of sex trafficking, unfortunately, like Las Vegas. So it makes me wonder, like, what he found out and if he actually died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, or if there's more to that story, and if he is connected to the attack in any way. But let's go on to Las Vegas. On January 1st, 2025, just before 8 a.m., a Cybertruck full of fireworks and explosives pulled up in front of the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. So the truck pulled up in front of the hotel and was there for about 15 to 20 seconds before it exploded. In that time, the driver of the truck took his own life with a gunshot to the head. This explosion caused injuries to 7 people, but they seemed to be pretty minor. Only 2 of them went to the hospital to get checked out. Nobody died besides the driver of the truck. It is believed that the explosion was less severe due to the driver choosing a Cybertruck. The truck seemed to have contained most of the blast, so most of it went upwards instead of outwards. So it actually saved people. Upon initial investigation, the body of the driver was so badly burned they could not identify him. And they had traced the truck back to Colorado because of the tracker, because it's a Tesla, so they could use the Tesla tracker. They were like, yep, this truck originated in Colorado. However, by January 2nd, social media was blowing up with his identity. Everyone was like, oh, this is who it is. This is who it is. So finally, the FBI identified the driver as 37-year-old Matthew Livelsberger from Colorado Springs, Colorado. His military ID was in the truck and the tattoos matched him, so they assumed it was him, but they did finally get the DNA to match that it was Matthew Livelsberger. He rented the truck from the app Turo in Colorado and drove it to Las Vegas. Matthew Livelsberger was born July 1987 and raised in Ohio. He joined the Army in 2006 as a communications specialist, and he probably got out around 2010. After getting out, he joined the National Guard in 2011 and the Army Reserves in 2012, but much like prison, it's hard to stay out of the military. I don't know if I can make a joke like that. Anyway, so he went back active duty. I'm assuming that he came back in as a special forces guy because in 2013, he was on the History Channel's Ultimate Soldier Challenge, where Green Berets faced off against Norwegians FSK. And actually, this whole show is about like our special forces guys facing off against other countries' special forces guys. And in that show, they kicked butt. It's just like two of our guys versus two of their guys. And both of our guys were Green Berets. So if he's in that show as a Green Beret, that tells me that he came back into active duty as a Green Beret or as a special forces guy. He earned a bachelor's degree in strategic studies and defense analysis from Norwich University. In 2012, he married, but they divorced in 2018. And in 2019, he dated an Army nurse on and off until they officially called it quits in 2021. And she actually came out and talked a lot to like news sources, stating that Matthew had a traumatic brain injury from his time overseas and that he basically sacrificed his whole life for the Army, including his brain. In 2020, he purchased a property in Colorado Springs, Colorado. In 2023, he became a Special Forces Operations Manager. In 2024, he became a Remote and Autonomous Systems Manager. He was assigned to the 10th Special Forces Group in Germany and had made it to the rank of Master Sergeant. In some places, I found that he did 2 deployments to Afghanistan, and in other places, I found that he did 5. With how long he was in the military, I would say he probably did closer to 5, but I don't know that for sure. All the sources were kind of all over the place, somewhere between 2 and 5 deployments to Afghanistan, but he was awarded 2 Bronze Stars. Livelsberger was on approved leave when he died, and in the days leading up to the attacks, he was reaching out to people with a platform to try to get a message out there. He reached out to at least Sam Shoemate and Sean Ryan. I'm sure he reached out to more people. When he reached out to Sam Shoemate, he was asking to be put on the Sean Ryan show or to Fox News. He wanted to get a message out. And that's what they're saying he was doing, that it wasn't a terrorist attack, but it was a way to get his message out because he wanted to bring awareness to the drones. He was saying that they are being used for the operational use of gravity propulsion systems powered by aircraft, and they're being sent here from China, similar to the Chinese spy balloon from a few years ago. But he also wanted to bring awareness to the airstrikes in Afghanistan in 2019. So the airstrikes caused hundreds of civilian casualties, and it was all just covered up because these casualties were considered war crimes by the UN because of how many civilians died. Like, the cost versus reward just wasn't there, but the sitting administration at the time just covered it all up. And that was Trump. So people point to this and say, well, that's why he blew up a truck in front of Trump Hotel. But there's some pretty weird things about this as well. Because firstly, he pulls up in front of a 5-star hotel. And he's there for, 15, 20 seconds. That's a decent amount of time. If you're just going to pull up and sit there for a while, somebody's going to come out to greet you. A 5-star hotel, you're telling me nobody comes out to greet you? No valet, which is free at the hotel, by the way. No bellhop to grab his bags. Nothing. That's convenient. I watched the video. Yeah, there's people at the valet counter, it looks like, maybe, because they're pretty far away. It's hard to tell. But nobody comes to greet him at the hotel. And there's nobody walking around outside the hotel. Granted, it's early. It's right after New Year's Eve, so maybe most of the hotel goers are still sleeping. I can understand that. But the workers should at least greet you. You're at a 5-star hotel. Secondly, these explosions, it didn't really look like the work of a special forces guy. It was just some homemade looking mortar fireworks and gas cans kind of thrown in the bed of the truck. He decided last minute that he was going to do this. And like he just threw a bunch of stuff in the bed of his truck, or the bed of this truck he rented. Like, he killed bad guys for a living. If he was trying to make a statement, he would have made it. Like, this isn't the statement he was trying to go for. He definitely would have known how to make a bigger statement because of his time overseas and his time in the military. But there are some weird connections between the two attacks as well. And everyone's like, oh, they're not connected. One was a terrorist attack and one was just a guy, like a broken guy. Everyone just says, oh, he just had mental health issues. He was just a broken guy. Or maybe not. Maybe they are connected. Let's talk about Fort Bragg, because both Jabbar and Livelsberger were stationed at Fort Bragg during their time in the Army. And Ryan Wesley Ruth, the guy that attempted to assassinate Trump at the golf course in Florida, had visited Fort Bragg about 150 times. Now, that's not a smoking gun, because that's like me saying that both Zach Bryan and I were stationed at Pensacola during our time in the Navy. That's 100% true. We both were. We were not there at the same time, and I don't know Zach Bryan. But, I mean, you could say that about a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of people in the military, right? You guys get my point. But Livelsberger and Jabbar were both there in 2012 and attended the same training. Not only that, but the Army Special Warfare School's Psychological Operations Department is at Fort Bragg. And they have a 2-hour course introducing PSYOPs in an unconventional warfare environment. And where can you get the information for that? Well, the CIA's website, of course, because, the CIA and the Army work hand in hand with PSYOPs. Interesting that the CIA has been brought in on this. You all know where I'm going with this. MK Ultra, sleeper cells. It just, things just aren't adding up. It's too convenient. It's all too convenient, right? Is this why Livelsberger didn't do a very good job with the explosion? Like, maybe he was supposed to create a bigger mess, but he chose the Cybertruck on Turo because he knew it would contain the explosion better than another car would have? And is that why he just threw things in the bed of the truck to make an explosion? Like, he did his job, but he didn't do a great job. Maybe his special forces background meant that he could actually resist the brainwashing probably better than Jabbar could have, just being a human resource guy. And that could explain why Ruth visited the base 147 times. Why would any civilian visit a base that many times? I went to base a lot because I had to. Since I've been out of the Navy, I've gone to bases 10 times maybe. And I get it. Some people are military buffs and they like to visit bases. I understand that. I'm not trying to say that that's not a thing. But the fact of the matter is, Ruth was in and out of trouble for a long time. He was in and out of trouble with the law. So why would you willingly go to the military base where, potentially you could get caught? Probably not. Typically military and police officer, the city police, don't talk to each other, or state police, they don't really talk to each other unless they have to. But regular civilians might not know that. And the brainwashing sleeper cell idea could explain why they both used the same app to get a car, why they both got a car from their respective states and then drove to the place of the attack, why they both got trucks, and why they both did it on the same time within hours of each other. They could explain it. There is one other famous bomber that also was at Fort Bragg. And the conspiracies run super deep with him. So we're actually going to cover him next week. And that's Timothy McVeigh. If you don't know who he is, he was responsible for the Oklahoma City bombing. I actually covered him on Cult Chronicles a while ago now. So I'm going to use that same information as his history. I did not cover the conspiracies about Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City bombing on that podcast. So I'm going to cover all of that next week because wow. But anyway, so by now you all know that I like to listen to the Sean Ryan podcast. I don't listen to every single episode. I listen to ones here and there. I happened to listen to an episode he had recently. He had Sarah Adams on, and she was a CIA targeter. And they talked about the potential of terrorist attacks coming to the U.S. and very soon, this year soon. She said that terrorist groups were training or are training guys and probably already have about 1,000 people here ready to attack at any time. And I know you're probably thinking, 1,000 people, that's not that many. Well, look at how much damage one person can do. Now imagine 1,000 people and where they're at in the US. Like, we don't know where they're at. We don't know what they're doing or what they're planning. They could be anywhere and they could attack at any moment. She did say it's most likely that they will attack the Capitol, but that doesn't mean that they won't attack other places. She and others have also given this information to the correct authorities, but they've done nothing about it. They don't seem to care at all. So that makes me wonder, are they on the side of the terrorists? Like, our government is funding the terrorists. If you listen to that episode, which is in the show notes, you'll hear her talking about how our government is funding basically our demise. But it makes me wonder, like, are they funding them on purpose? Like, do they know that they're funding terrorists? Are they aiding them because they want to create a big thing for maybe a new world order? Unclear, but something to think about. Let's talk about the Ford coincidence. So Jabbar rented a Ford F-150 Lightning that had 4 doors and was white. Interestingly enough, parked in front of the Cybertruck at the Trump Hotel that morning was a white 4-door F-150. Now, I can't say for certain that it was a Lightning because it's pretty far away and I'm not that good with cars. But that's just a little too coincidental to me, especially when you add the fact that Ford's X account was hacked just days before the attacks, and the hacker was posting things like Free Palestine and Israel is a terrorist state and all eyes on Gaza. So those 3 tweets were posted back to back to back before Ford got a hold of their account. They deleted them and they came out with an apology saying that they were hacked. And then a Ford just happens to be the truck that Jabbar chooses. That's weird. And speaking of Lightning, does anybody else find it weird that on New Year's Eve, the U.S. Capitol building, the Washington Monument, the Empire State Building, and One World Trade Center were all struck by lightning? I mean, some say this is a message from God. But this begs the question, like, did the lightning strike these buildings or did the lightning originate from these buildings? Because the lightning that hit the Capitol building and the Washington Monument in D.C. struck at the exact same time. And some people say that the one that struck the Empire State Building struck at the exact same time as well. I could not verify that. That is a rumor. I don't know for sure. But I know that the U.S. Capitol Building, the Washington Monument, both in D.C., struck at the exact same time. That's weird. Like, what are the odds of that? And then a Ford Lightning is used in this terrorist attack. I mean, come on. Something weird is going on. Tell me I'm wrong, because this is just too weird. It's too many things. Buckle up, because I think it's going to be a crazy year. Because if it starts like this, Lord only knows what we will see this year. And I have big plans for my podcast this year, and I will just keep doing current events episodes back to back if I have to. But I don't want to. I want to show you all these other conspiracy theories. But man, there's so many happening right now. Anyway, until next week, my friends, stay skeptical, and I will see you all then. Hey friends, The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast with everything you hear done by me, Danny Mercy. I appreciate all of your support. Please rate and review wherever you're listening. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it's at rabbit.holepodcast. And thank you, Zakar Balaha, for our awesome intro.